Hi, and thanks for watching. I wanted to talk a little bit about this idea of building internal qi, right? Building up our internal power. This is a common characteristic of all the internal styles, right? It's the definition, what sets them apart, whether we're doing Qigong or Tai Chi, Bagua Xingyi. All of them have this idea and methodologies for building internal power. And of course, this is the starting point for all these traditions and these practices. So with Qigong and with Tai Chi, we have a standing posture, something like Zhuang Zhang, right? We have the standing posture here. There's various standing postures. This one's a very common one, very commonly used posture. Stand for 5 minutes, stand for 10 minutes, stand for 20 minutes, stand for an hour, so on and so forth. In Xingyi, we also have a standing posture. It's a different posture, San Ti, but we have a standing posture. It said only if you have trained your standing for 3 years will your Xingyi become good. Ideally, both sides too. And then, of course, with Bagua, it's not a static posture, but there's still posture training. There's the postures that are held as the circle walking training is done. All of these different methods for the different styles are described in a similar way in terms of allowing the qi to gather in, allowing the mind to settle and become clear, allowing the body to change. And then once we've started this process of building the qi by doing these things, then we add in the characteristic movements of the Qigong practice or the Tai Chi practice. So there's the silk reeling in Tai Chi, there's the routines. In Xingyi we have the fundamental strikes, right? And then of course in Bagua we have the various changes. Which then train the footwork, train the handwork, train the techniques, activate the channels, train the intent. And each one is subtly different, or not so subtly different from the others. And this is what gives each tradition its characteristic qualities. So, but we have to come back to this first idea of what it means to build the internal power. And one of the challenges with this, of course, is that this is a pre-modern concept. It's something that when we think about it from our modern perspective, it's very hard to grasp what they were meaning when they were describing this. And so my current thinking in relation to this has shifted a little bit. One of the main characteristics in terms of a modern perspective is that compared to non-modern cultures and pre-modern cultures is how separated it is in terms of the mind being separated from the body, of a person being separated from their environment or their surroundings. It's very characteristic in modern culture, in modernity, the degree to which we have isolated these things. In other cultures and other ways of perceiving the world, there's distinctions to be made, but there's also this understanding in varying degrees of how things are related to each other, how they're connected. So when we come to the description of charging up the body with doing the standing posture, building the internal power, building the qi, from a modern perspective, we can't help but think of it something like taking gasoline and pouring it into the gas tank, which raises interesting questions in terms of, well, where is this gas tank? How do we add the gasoline exactly? Those kinds of things. And I'm now thinking that actually closer to what might have been the pre-modern idea of this building the qi is closer to like having a tuning fork, and you hit the tuning fork and it starts to vibrate. And then you take that tuning fork and you put it on a guitar, an acoustic guitar. And suddenly the volume of the note that gets made by the tuning fork suddenly becomes much louder. Why has it become much louder? It's because there's been this connection made between the tuning fork and the resonating body of the guitar. The structure of the guitar allows, it vibrates in kind, picks up the vibration from the tuning fork, and suddenly the body of the guitar is vibrating, and so the volume goes up, becomes louder. Right? So there's two key things here. One is this idea of this connection, and the second is the expanded quality of the guitar. If we took that same tuning fork and put it on a block of wood, it wouldn't increase the volume quite so much, right? It's the nature and structure of this guitar that is a part of what creates the increase in the resonance, the increase in the sound. In a practical sense, one of the things that this tells us is what we're doing and how we want to change our body is one that it shouldn't become denser and denser. Right? We actually want to create a structure inside the body that is able to resonate more. There's a second sort of image that I think is helpful. It's very closely related, but instead of a tuning fork, we have a string, say it's a harp. And so alongside the string is a whole bunch of other strings, and they're all on a frame of the harp. And so you pluck one string, but because of the connection through the frame of the instrument, then the other strings, especially the one octave below and one octave above, they're also going to vibrate in kind. They create a resonance. And so the sound that you get isn't simply the sound of one string vibrating, but of multiple strings all vibrating, and also the frame of the instrument vibrating. And so you get an increase in the depth and quality of the sound that is created. And I think this concept helps to explain some of the training methods. So for example, with Qigong or Tai Chi, it's very common to say, oh, you should practice it in a group. Or the idea that with the practice, there is a teacher at the front, and you follow the teacher as the teacher goes through the moves. Right? In the same way, you have these strings on the harp that are vibrating and tuning each other into, the more that they're in tune with each other, the stronger that shared resonance, that shared vibration will be. And I think even if you're not thinking about training in groups, it's this emphasis that's placed on things like lineage or history or tradition. So in this case, there's a connection that's being made as well, but it's not in the space around you, but back in time, connecting you to the practice as it has been practiced over time. And so this is a very different kind of thinking in terms of this building of the internal chi. I think what happens when we do some of these foundational practices, anyone who's done them comes to recognize that they're actually quite challenging. They're physically challenging, mentally they're also quite challenging. And if we're looking at it in isolation, then the main thing we see is just these physical and mental challenges, and think, oh, well, let's just do this really for as long as we can muster, and just try and power our way through. And this must be an idea around building the chi. But I think that's only half of the equation. I think that is part of it, because you want to condition the body. But again, going back to the analogy of the guitar, you want to condition the body in a particular way, right? And of course, I was mentioning before, part of the training is to train the intent. And so when we're training the intent, it is training this idea of this, paying attention to this connection and to this receptivity. It's like these foundational trainings are designed to build us like the body of a guitar. So instead of making us denser and denser, we want to build a structure that is more expanded, more capable of holding and resonating in relation to these traditions, and then thereby amplifying these. So it needs both the idea of building an intentional structure, but then connecting this structure to something larger than itself. And so I think this is one of the key ways my thinking around building the internal Qi has evolved. And I wanted to share it in terms of hoping that it will give you some new ways of thinking about how you do your training. The main idea is this idea of forming the intent that creates this structure that enables us to create a better capacity to resonate and to amplify and find the ways to be receptive to these different kinds of connections. So I hope this information is helpful for you. Keep training, keep practicing, and take care.